And how much does that department cost?
Right.
That's what we need to know. You know, I mean, if you can't have, courses in schools to supplement lots of family, discussions, and understanding, then the fact that the city has now got a department is
Disgusting.
it is disgusting.
Oh, did you?
Yes, it's awful.
It's
I
just
thought
a
you were
waste
maybe
of money.
doing this one virtually,
Our
so
money.
I didn't.
Yes, I know.
But we could be doing other things with that are very, very
Yeah,
important.
but then, you know, you say other things with, and then you realize that you have no control over.
The things that you want.
Yeah.
Or the things you really need.
Oh,
Okay, we'll ask her.
No way. No way. Do you see anybody using the bike lanes right
No.
now? Or Winter City?
No, but I do see them.
I see people using the bike lane.
Do you think it's $170 million?
Yes, I do.
Why?
Because if you build it, people will use them.
They've been around for a few years now.
They will. It's
Maybe you're on there, but nobody else.
so many people don't cycle because they don't feel safe.
No.
Been there too, but if Amsterdam has to be Amsterdam,
That's what I was just gonna say.
there's winter cycling.
Things that, I have no idea, but, we don't have the same priorities and needs as.
I can grab your coat.
Thank you so much. Oh, thank you both so much. I'm very sorry for the chaos. Okay. This is such a great setup. How did you do this? Magic.
Maria found that somewhere. I did not bring a little metal.
Amazing. We're live?
Yes, we are live.
We are live. Oh,
Have something on the back. Just like even one strip.
great. Well, hello everyone. Hi. Hello. Thank you so much for your patience. Hello to everyone online as well. I deeply apologize for my tardiness. I thought that starting nighttime routine with my 2.5-year-old would give me lots of time, but it did not. She decided to try some potty training. So my apologies. Yeah, thank you everyone so much for coming out tonight. It's great to see so many people in person, and I don't know what our count is online, 2 people online. But great to have so many of you joining in person today. Thank you for coming out.
Can't hear you very well.
No? Oh dear, is that any better if I really project? Okay, well remind me, because I tend to be quiet.
Well, we're a rowdy crowd.
Excellent. Well, the way I like to do this, I'll just start off with some preliminary comments, but then really happy to have more of a dialogue and take questions. I think Robbie will be monitoring online for any online folks who want to submit questions. We're happy to get to those too. But hello, I'm Anne Stevenson, just as a start. Hopefully most of you know that. We've just passed a year on council, which is a pretty exciting milestone. It has been quite the 12 months, but a really, really exciting year. And I feel so grateful to be in this role and to have the chance to connect with you all. But coming up, of course, is our big task, which is the 4-year budget. So that's taking up a lot of my mental energy right now and a lot of the work that we're doing on council. Something that I was really heartened by, we had a citizen satisfaction survey that went out. And what came through very strongly for me is that Edmontonians really do want to see investment in affordable housing, social supports, community safety, and transit as well. We've also seen that 77% of Edmontonians want us to be taking climate action. So those are priorities that I keep top of mind. You know, I'm hearing a lot too about downtown, so always making sure that we're investing in the heart of our city as well.
You know what?
The heart of our city in the downtown.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, we have been hearing, so my wonderful team who you've met and who've got us set up today, they've been highlighting some of the things we're hearing about in emails. So, you know, some folks are saying they don't want to see any increases at all in taxes. Others are saying it's okay if we see an increase to fund our priorities. Interestingly, apparently there's lots of support for the bike lanes, so I think there's a bit of an email campaign going out there right now. Winter shelter and having a winter shelter strategy is a big one right now. It's something that I'm seeing and definitely seeing a need for. Concerns about, you know, the lack of housing and social supports, and some of the challenges that's creating in our communities. Victoria Promenade has been another key point that people have been raising, and interested to see how that plays out over the winter. And snow removal, it's that season again. So yeah, I just wanted to flag a few opportunities for engagement for some bigger projects happening in the ward. The Warehouse Park, that's the big new central park in downtown Edmonton, where kind of where the Boston Pizza is on Jasper Ave, I think between 100 and, what would that be, 6th and 8th. Engagement is going to begin on November 14th, which is tomorrow? Today. So an online survey will be open until December 4th, so I encourage you all to provide your feedback there. There'll be some in-person events on November 22nd as well, and then also virtual. And also just a reminder too that the zoning bylaw, that's another really big piece that we're going to be having our first look at committee in a few weeks. But there's ongoing engagement about that as well. So with that, I'm very happy to turn it over to questions. It's very informal, so feel free to just raise your hand or just shout out a question. We can get started from there. All right.
Just a question, you said some percentages, you had city approved, or the public was approving by 77%.
Oh yeah.
Where did you get those numbers, and did it involve 100 people and 77 said yay, or what's it really mean?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So my understanding, the citizen satisfaction survey that was presented to us on October 31st, so we can share, and maybe Robbie, if you can capture this, we can send out a link to this if you provide your email. But I believe that was sort of an independently run survey that used really sophisticated, like it was done to be statistically significant. So it ensured the right demographic representation. It was done by an outside agency that focused.
So phone solicitation?
I think it was phone solicitation, again with that weighting depending on the demographics. But it wasn't sort of just like a link on a website or like a insight survey. It was done by an outside agency to have that statistical relevancy.
I'm just curious because we're talking money for a lot of these things.
Mm-hmm.
So 1,000 people are involved. Is that the right number? Were they in the right communities? How was it decided?
Did somebody here was ever questioned or was over
I
that?
wasn't.
Nobody was.
About
About the same thing.
having the input.
Nobody was asking.
I've never heard of this survey.
I didn't either.
Yeah, so I think,
had one
okay,
just recently.
yeah,
Yeah, it came in the mail, It was a Queen Mary Central McDougall survey, about the community. And it was, so I went onto the website and answered it.
Okay.
Revitalization, that's citywide.
I don't know
okay.
who it was.
Yeah, so I think with the budget one, so the intent of, so doing the statistically significant one, that's meant to have a random sample. So you reach out to people, so instead of people sort of seeing a link and opting in, it's that outreach. I had understood that the budget survey was also available like as a public link, but I'm sorry that wasn't, I could have done more to promote that, and we'll definitely take that away in terms of those opportunities. But there's still lots of opportunities to provide feedback on the budget. So there's a public hearing, a non-statutory public hearing coming up on the 28th, the 29th, there's the 27th and 28th of November. And so that's an opportunity for you to come to council. You can register to speak, and you'll be provided with 5 minutes to share your perspectives, share your thoughts. I'm also very happy to have emails. My plan is in the next couple of weeks to kind of release what my budget plan is, what my priorities are, what I'm going to be focused on doing, and you know, really happy to get feedback from you on that. Yeah, folks have started emailing in terms of what they think are priorities, what they want to see or don't want to see. So
Myself, for example, I would like to go, but I don't feel safe walking downtown. I
Mm.
don't feel safe taking the LRT, and I don't have place to park. So I think other people, they have the same opinion.
Absolutely. I'd say that's probably our number one email is concerns, safety concerns in the downtown and on
So-
transit.
Our voices can be heard.
Yes, how do our voices get heard?
So the way that I'm actioning that is that, so safety on transit, for example, I would think it's really important that we fund our community outreach transit teams, which are peace officers, EPS, and social workers that have been working in our transit centers and LRT system. That's currently not funded in our operating budget. There's no funding that's allocated for that. So that's an example of something that I'm gonna say, hey, I'm hearing from people what a priority that is, and I'm gonna make an effort to get that package funded.
I think what he meant was, how is he supposed to get to City Hall to talk at this meeting? If he doesn't feel comfortable.
Oh, ha ha ha.
being there?
But that's also a different.
That's another point.
Gotcha.
Another.
So sorry, just to that, you can participate virtually. That's an option too if you genuinely don't feel like you can make it to City Hall.
That's good.
Okay. Were there other?
I have a few, but I don't want to.
Sure. We can go in rounds.
Well, why don't you use the money from this new GBA department
Right.
for the communities and for, I mean, everybody seems to be short.
For safety.
The police are short, the crime fighters are short, and the snow removal is short. And this ridiculous department, I didn't receive any information about, do you want this? Do
No.
you even know what it is?
Yeah, what is it?
So like the gender-based analysis,
Yeah.
GBA plus.
What's that about?
Yeah, so that's not a specific department. That's just a way that we're analyzing the reports that come forward and the decisions that we make. And that's really about ensuring that we are hearing the plurality of voices in the community. So a lot of people, when we're making decisions, they've traditionally been left out. Their needs haven't been considered. And so the GBA plus analysis is a way to address that.
What's an example? I'm completely in the dark, but this
Yeah.
is what it means.
You have to give us
Life's been
examples.
pretty, I'm a different generation than you are a little bit. But this is Greek to me, and I hear it, but I don't understand it.
Yeah. Yeah, so snow clearing is an example that comes up or that comes to mind. So, normally we might just look at snow clearing and think, we're gonna make some decisions around snow clearing because we need to ensure that commuters are able to get from the suburbs to downtown as quickly as possible, and that's what we're gonna focus on. And so what the GBA analysis will say is, well, hang on, if we're only looking at snow clearing that serves people who are commuting, we're maybe missing out on seniors. So what are the snow clearing considerations we need to think about around seniors' facilities? So it's just a way to think more broadly about how our decisions impact different community members differently.
The word senior is fine, that's easy to define. When I say race, age, ability, education, ethnicity, job, it's got nothing to do with seniors. Or may have, but.
Yeah, I mean, I
I'm
think
just
those
saying
are.
that's a whole package that. Why would we be doing anything different because it's a different race?
Oh,
Why would we
like
do
there's.
anything For snow removal as an example, or pick something else, cause I don't understand.
No, use snow removal, because when you don't have the walkways cleared, we can't get out with canes and walkers. Okay, so,
Absolutely.
and there's no department, when you phone to find out why a sidewalk is not clear from, one address through 5 addresses to the corner.
Mm-hmm.
This lady, for instance, told me she had to walk on the street to get here. So, you know, as much as we leave it up to homeowners, if you can plow a bike lane, you can plow a sidewalk.
Yeah, so that's actually one of the options. So earlier in the year, we asked city staff to come back with a bunch of options for enhanced snow clearing. And one of them was looking at the city doing all the sidewalk clearing. That would have cost like hundreds of millions of dollars a year. So we ended up not pursuing that. But something that I'm keen to do is to increase enforcement of sidewalks being cleared. So I live in Oliver, and so it's a lot of apartment buildings, and the management just doesn't do it, and it's very frustrating. It's very hard. Again, I'm pushing a stroller sometimes. It's very challenging if you have a cane. So that's something that I'm really interested in doing, and again, that's a really great example of when we apply, again, just like it's a silly term, but the GBA analysis. That just lets us think through, okay, who do we need to be thinking about, right? We need to be thinking about people who are walking more in the winter and using sidewalks, and how do we make sure their needs are met?
Well,
Still haven't nailed it.
sorry.
No?
No, that's an age thing, an ability
Okay.
thing, but the way you worded it here is raise.
And sir, I don't know what booklet you're looking at. What is?
Well, that's these here, so it's left on the table here.
Oh, okay.
That's where, let's get it together, yeah.
It's the last
Oh.
inside page. Flip to the last inside.
Oh, interesting, interesting.
If you could get
So you haven't seen that?
No, I think this is just a resource for public hearings, so that people are interested in some of the rezonings or infill that's been happening. This is a good resource in terms of attending public hearing. Oh, and this is actually really good. This all applies to if you want to come speak at the budget public hearing. So this talks about what it looks like, where you can sit, attending in person or attending virtually. So that actually is a very handy resource to have. And then, so sorry, just the
last page.
the equity, city planning, and the statutory public hearing process? Yeah, so yeah, the GBA plus process, again, it's just in all of our reports, we talk about, most of our reports, they have the main report, and then it will talk about legal implications, budget implications, and then we just have a section called GBA plus, and it just sort of discusses those equity pieces.
But you're saying there isn't any extra money allocated to that, it's just another framework to think about things?
Yeah,
It doesn't cost anything?
No,
Right.
yeah.
no cost.
And it's been through the federal government for years and years now.
Could be, it's just a wordy,
Right.
Yeah.
It's identifying things that,
Yeah, but, so.
You got to give me an example
I've
where-
done a bunch of work with the federal government, and one of the things that I've seen, if you think about the last 500 years or 5,000 years, our society's been skewed towards people like me. Reasonably well off, white, male, we're the dominant part of society, we make the rules, everybody else follows along. That's not what makes up the world, and so because I can get out and walk the neighborhood, and I don't really care, should I not bother shoveling my sidewalk? Because I'm fine. I don't need it, I don't have a little kid in a pram, I don't have a stroller or a cane.
that's not my point.
No, let me finish, please. Go ahead. Okay? That's one possible example, but it applies to many, many things. If you think about the people like me that work in the city, we're not heavy transit users, right? So, but there are racialized minorities who don't have vehicles, who don't have another way to get around. We need a viable transit system so people can actually get places. If you want to go from here to the south side, it's a terrible experience on transit sometimes. But it doesn't matter to me because I can drive. And if we only put the lens on a white male 50-year-old guy, odds are pretty good that we're going to miss a bunch of people in our society who don't have the privileges I have.
Give me an example of that, of a
Transit.
something would be missed.
Somebody wants to go to IKEA.
Right?
How do you go to IKEA?
I don't know, but I imagine if there's a bus, there's a bus, then yeah. I know.
Well, but
if-
that's
but
the,
if
so the,
Sorry,
Oh.
if you're a woman wearing a hijab, you might never go to IKEA because you might be assaulted on the
No,
elevator.
I think what this.
And so you
does
have to look at that, that's all.
is it actually just helps you distinguish where resources need to go first. So there's a lot of areas that, it just helps you figure out where the attention needs to go. There's some areas that maybe, there's no issues with sidewalks being cleared, but there's some areas in the city that there are and it's needed there. So I think that's
I
what
don't
it does.
disagree with that.
Yeah, okay.
I object to the word race
So in your opinion, it's fine if we only look at things from the point of view of somebody who
No,
looks
I
like
Well,
me?
we're all
think people in
like
general,
right?
I would never do that, I
People.
didn't grow up that way.
So,
I think people in general.
but that's how our decision-making frameworks have been set for many, many years. Look at the council we have today and contrast it to councils 20 years ago.
It's a mix today.
It's a very big mix today, and we're thinking about things differently. And this is just part of how we think about things differently, is that everybody in our city has a different experience. And if everybody that is making decisions comes from the same background and thinks about things the same way, they miss perspectives. And it's a way of broadening thinking so that people are exposed to multiple perspectives.
And just look at the demographic that comes here.
That could be, I'm just asking.
Race-wise speaking, they're not gonna come out to a town hall. Only people who are fairly educated either have a gripe or feel like they're not heard. They don't even know how, some people, right? So I think that's just what it's trying to do, is create an opportunity.
I don't see how it's going to.
I don't see how it's
We're
going to
gonna
for
fix
yourself.
the bus so someone with a hijab can ride it. Because
Gives them the opportunity to voice if they have that issue.
Yeah.
It raises it as an issue to be considered. Whether we can fix it or not, it's another matter. But if you don't even know about it as an issue,
Anyway, I'll leave it
Yeah.
alone for now. Let's
All
see
right,
what
well, we can catch up further, but I really appreciate all the perspectives in the room, and it's something that I believe is really important.
It's fair that everybody be treated equally. That's.
Well,
That's the
and
point of it.
and I,
That's the point of it.
yeah,
But I,
That's the point of it.
yeah.
understand, but I don't need to see it.
Well,
to-
I asked for
to
clarification
grow up
about a
that way.
department, and there's no department, so I'm satisfied with that answer.
All right,
Thanks.
great.
I have a question, and it's a genuine question. We have been talking about sidewalk clearing. How does the city decide? I've looked at the maps where there's the 24-hour clearing and the 81-hour clearing, right? What's required to be cleared by city is city property, it's city sidewalk,
Yeah,
not residential.
okay,
And some sidewalks are designated that the city is supposed to clear them within 24 hours after the end of the snowfall, I'm not sure. And some are designated to be cleared after 81 hours. Do you know how that's decided?
in terms of the priority, which one is 24, yeah, yeah,
In terms of how you make a priority.
Yeah.
That's the question, yeah.
Yeah, so it's something that came up for sure in our conversations about that, and I know that the team takes a variety of factors into consideration. So, you know, I know, for example, business improvement areas are sort of highlighted as priorities around transit, LRT, those are higher priorities. But in terms of like some of those more like really granular details, I can certainly follow up to get more information. But I think that's the general intent, that it's aligned with, you know, strategic priorities where there's high usage. Yeah. But that's, you know, I think, you know, something that we found in the review of the snow and ice program is that those targets weren't always being met. So again, we've looked at opportunities to make sure that those are being met, or trading off, you know, maybe it needs to be 36 hours versus 24, that kind of approach.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Okay, so I'm the one that wrote you that email concerning the development and rezoning of properties in the mature neighborhoods.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess primarily the question is, with the city council's attempt to create more affordable housing, there's been this idea of allowing infills to come into the mature neighborhood to therefore create a little bit more density. So we've been seeing this happen on our street quite a bit, and the major issue is not when we see two skinny houses on a single detached home. I think that's fair to have that. However, what is actually happening is these proper 50-foot wides are getting subdivided with 6 dwellings.
Yep,
So now you got 6 times the population on one square.
and parking.
Parking, overuse of utilities, the sewage and garbage issues, just general density, sewage or whatever. So the question is, are there any limitations on these new infills? It doesn't, from our perspective, it doesn't seem so. And also second, a lot of the zoning changes that are occurring don't seem to be as transparent as they were, let's say, 10 years ago. Because I recall living in Glenora Gates condominium, and any little zone change, I got a letter from the city saying this is changing from DCA to DCB or whatever it was. At the time when I lived in a condo, I didn't care, right? My world is a little apartment building, and what you want to do out there, I don't really care.
Yeah.
So now I'm getting it, it's a nuisance. But now that I moved to a single detached, I'm raising a family in a mature neighborhood, and these things are happening around me, and we're getting no notification. We're getting, the most recent one is how does a transition home all of a sudden pop up with no notification? No canvassing the neighborhood on,
No
is this
city
okay?
meeting.
So now we've got drug addicts shooting up in the backyard, as we're trying to go to a park, and people smoking pot on my garage because my garage is shaded, and just random things. So that's probably the worst scenario of it, but exacerbates the neighborhood to say what's going on here, and then all of a sudden you see four dwelling units of garbage cans. Okay, so that's in one block. And then a neighbor going down to a neighbor's place, seeing the new development, hearing that it's a single up and down, and then a duplex up and down. So now that's not only a 4, it's gonna be a 6. And then a corner lot, 110 and 113, changing from RF0 to RF, or whatever the zoning is to allow the townhome,
Yeah.
the corner lot. That's another one, is that when they put the placard up, you saw it, and I called the person's number. That all happened last year. I got no return call, no return email, so it's absent. Then when it seemed like it changed names, and I spoke to a permit officer, whoever it was, and then they said, by that time they said, oh well, you're too late. It's already gone past. I sat in on the city council. I didn't sit on it live, but I watched it happen. So, and it just kind of just got shuffled along. There was really no discourse. The community didn't get to say anything if we did. So there's a lot of things that are occurring and changing with seemingly no limitations, no transparency, no communication.
And no accountability.
Yeah, and that's the after fact. It's now like, okay, we knock on the door, who's in charge? Oh, it's this unit on 118, they're unreachable. You go knock on their door, nobody's at the front desk, you call their number, nobody returns. So there's no recourse. I call the city, I talk to permit people, they're like, oh, this is subdivided, sold, it's nothing we can do. I talk to the guy, he's like, you can try to talk to Ann, but it's serious, but you're really not gonna change anything. This is the city's direction. So it's just kind of feeling all of this, you dig, you dig, and then you just need to know where is this direction, what is the plan, what are the limitations?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, and I think a lot of it does come down to clarity, and I appreciate, when change is happening in your neighborhood and you don't have a sense of what's going on. That's really frustrating, and even just every property within 60 meters of rezoning is meant to get a mail out, so I don't know why you wouldn't have received a rezoning form for that, so I apologize, and we can definitely look to follow up with staff, but that is practice. I know that there have been issues in the past with how that gets delivered through Canada Post, the timing, so certainly happy to follow that up. But in terms of the overall vision, I think that there is a fair bit of clarity that's provided in city plan in terms of what the intent is, and the intent is for lots of change. I want to be transparent about that we are looking to build more in the core, and I really support that. I really value that. Thank you. I'll come to you next. For a variety of reasons. Part of that is just as an alternative to continued outward growth. That becomes really financially unsustainable for us as a city. I think that's why we're still struggling with property tax escalation is because of how we're growing in that way. It adds more roads that we need to maintain, more fire halls we need to build. It's expensive. Whereas if we can put 6 new units here, we don't have to build new roads, we don't have to maintain more roads, it's the same roads, it's the same infrastructure. Yeah, so sewage is a great question. So EPCOR Water, they do review every single rezoning application, and there are areas of the city where upgrades are required, and that's something that developers have to pay. So that is addressed in terms of that. In terms of the sewage, an interesting thing is that since the 1970s, even though our population has increased, our absolute water consumption has actually been decreasing. We just have much more sustainable fixtures and fittings for toilets, for shower flows. So our sewer capacity is actually very healthy because it was built to kind of deal with the flows back in the 70s, and now we have much lower, so we can add quite a few people. And that's not to say that there aren't pinch points, and EPCOR is watching all of this very carefully. So that to me is the opportunity I see. Why I think there's benefit. I think having more housing choices can be a really good thing in terms of inviting more people in to the community.
But so now we're going back to like protecting mature neighborhoods where we've had single like that. I purchased in this neighborhood because I saw it as like a little oasis close to downtown.
Mm-hmm.
But now and then Queen Mary Park specifically, there's a lot of housing options south of 108 Ave. All the low-rising four-story complexes are seemingly for that idea of creating more density in the urban setting, let's say. And what we see with infills, and I think what we end up seeing is that developers see it as a business opportunity to buy property in Queen Mary for $290, $300 and put on 2 skinnies and sell them both for $750.
That's not affordability. Automatic is not affordable.
Yeah, so exactly. So that kind of defeats the purpose of the idea of creating more density for different populations.
Yeah.
Or the lower income populations.
Yeah.
Because who's actually going to buy that $750, especially in this climate?
Yeah.
It's like it's totally slowing down.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate that skinnies haven't delivered on affordability in many different neighborhoods, and for me it's we need to go further, right? Like one of the issues of only allowing skinnies is that you're still sort of constraining what can be built there. So first I'll say 2 skinnies will still be cheaper than 1 large house. Like a brand new redeveloped house that has twice the footprint is going to be more expensive.
It's a house just right here. I can tell you it's cheaper than to do schemes. Like it's no brainer. You can buy houses for $300,000 in the neighborhood. You can buy $700,000 house.
And sorry, that one is a brand new build,
yes,
the single detached.
The same 110 Avenue.
Okay. Okay, that's not a typical trend, but I mean that's a good example of there being cases.
No, it's not. They didn't want to say, but I talked to the guy. It was like 500,000.
500. Yeah.
That's what I said, but of course.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
2 skinny houses, 700,000.
Yeah. So sorry, you've been waiting very patiently.
So you've been doing this a long time. So I've been on the revitalization committee since its inception. I've lived in this neighborhood for about 25 years. I'm currently on the board of directors of Queen Park Community. And with your predecessor and with the previous mayor, I've raised this issue several times. The issue of creating infill to create more population and all that kind of stuff doesn't really hold water. You've got brownfields sitting here on 105th Avenue North, from 116 all the way to 109th. Originally, that couldn't be zone too high because of the airport. The airport took that restriction away. We've estimated there could be 10 to 15,000 people living here, and yet the city is sitting on their hands, not working with the developers to say, let's get this done with it. You've got Blatchford sitting here. Nothing's happening except wheel spinning, and yet you'll come into the neighborhood or allow a developer to come into the neighborhood, original, and I was at those meetings, there was over 100 people in community leagues that spoke against the infill development. And the way it was being sold is that this would lead to affordability, and it has not led to affordability. Some developers are very good, and the houses are gorgeous. Other ones, quite frankly, are crap. You look at them and you say, what the hell? And the city has kind of said, well, the market will take care of it. It doesn't. So that's definitely an issue, and it's an issue that we're facing in the neighborhood. The other thing is that there are opportunists who know they're not even interested in development. So what they do is they'll purchase the old house, do the upzoning, and then they flip it, and then they flip it to somebody who's kind of inexperienced in development. You have two of them sitting right here on this street, where people have bought these lots, did the upzoning, now both those properties are sitting for sale. The people had no intention of actually developing. So the past mistakes really created a problem for a neighborhood, because when you sit there and a lot sits there for a year with a fence around it and a hole in the ground, I mean, how is that attractive to a neighborhood? And then when you have to phone the city and fight to say, we need a safety fence put around this, because there's a hole in the ground, and you don't get a response. And the comment that he made about phoning the developer, well, nobody calls you back, they don't care.
Yeah.
Or those calling or just swear at you if you tell them that they're doing something wrong.
Yeah.
So you see the frustrations with the way it's being rolled out. And then I also, and I had this discussion before, because I suspect that a lot of this infill development had to do with a backdoor way of increasing taxes. Because if you take a look at, say, the average price in Queen Park, let's just say $400,000, and you do your assessment on $400,000. Now you split that lot. You build 700, you just went from 400,000 in tax base to 1.4 million on the same lot, or even higher when you split and run 5. And a lot of times the development officers, and I've been at city council, and I've spoken against these things, and the development officers a lot of times haven't even done their homework. There's a 5-plex sitting here that we fought like crazy. The development officer said there was no row housing in Queen Mary Park. In the meeting, we Google search and we found 3 other row house developments. Like the development officer didn't even do their homework. And then when it was being questioned, then her response, well, I guess they got to watch what I say. It was like, no, do your homework. That development should have been thrown out of council.
Absolutely.
There was no lack of even the slightest amount of homework. I mean, if I can do a Google search, find the other developments, certainly I can. And I know it's way past, there's nothing to do, but the thing is that that's what we're facing now. That's what you're hearing, a lot of the frustration.
Yeah, no,
So my question, and I had
Sure.
a question to the previous mayor, why aren't you pushing the developer? Ask Ray Christensen, he said the same thing, like, why aren't you pushing these developers to get on this bare land? So everybody goes south of 104, well, it's built out, but the opportunity is here. And look at the density you can put in there before you come into the neighborhoods.
Yeah, I mean, I hear you, and I think that doing more to attract investment in some of the large parcels, absolutely. I was just meeting with someone who owns property, sort of just behind McEwen to a bit west of McEwen, but a whole city block. So looking at what they're planning to redevelop, we recently did the rezoning for that huge area behind the arena. So absolutely, those big sites are great opportunities. Those are going to be a certain type, though, right? Those are going to be higher density. What I think is also important is having those other options as well. So skinny, semis, row houses, I think those are also important, and those go in the communities. But
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but just to Tim's point and this gentleman's point. I mean, what you just said though kind of scares me a bit, because this is supposed to be a mature neighborhood. And specifically what Tim was saying about the 4-plex that was built, the developer said it was going to be a single family home, so nobody opposed it. And then somehow through the system was changed to a 4-plex in a mature neighborhood. Now within that 4-plex, they have for substance abuse people or offenders living there. So I almost ran one over in the back alley that was shooting up. Our neighbor actually had to build a new fence because they were shooting up in his garbage alcove. In talking to their quote-unquote supervisor, I asked, well, okay, who are you people? And he said, well, we're not actually allowed to say. I said, well, who are you? Well, I'm the team lead that's supposed to be watching these people. And I said, well, where are you guys at nighttime? He said, well, nobody's watching them at night. And my fear is that if we keep letting these multi-developments come in, I mean, you lose the aspect of a mature neighborhood, and thus, I mean, we're all kind of, why would I stay here then? I mean, I would move somewhere else where I know that somebody in behind isn't shooting up, and the person that's supposed to be watching them, when I ask, well, where are you guys? Well, we don't watch them at night. How is that possible? Like, how did the city actually allow that to happen without notifying anybody in the community? That's fine if they want to change the development, but then let us know so we have an opportunity to speak up. Now there's a fourplex in the neighborhood. So what are we going to do with this now?
Yeah, and maybe we can follow up in terms of that specific example.
So to this man's point, so you're spending $11 million on revitalization on Central McDougall Queen Mary Park. Big purpose of revitalization is to revitalization. This young man here says he picked this neighborhood, he wants to raise his family. That's great. Sahaj is her here. She loves this neighborhood. Her neighbors are actually saying, we're out of here. We're done with this. And so her neighbors are the nicest family ever. That's Amos. And I know the kids, and I'm saying, well, why are you leaving? We just can't take this anymore. Lori across the street, we're done. So you're pouring money in the top, but because of not taking care of things properly, like proper development, proper zoning, crime and safety, which we haven't even touched yet, you're losing people at the bottom here. Because I'm well known in the neighborhood, people come up to me and say, Randy, I'm done. I can't live here anymore.
Yeah.
How is this possibly sustainable? And just playing around, and I didn't even know where you guys live, and I heard about this one. We've got a drug house on the end of our street, 3 years. 3 years, we've reported it, and nothing is done.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think you raise an excellent point too, just the issue, is it the development or is it the operators and the people who are owning it, right? Yeah, so, yeah, and I agree. When I worked at the city, problem properties were a huge issue. I don't think that we had an effective response to that. I would say in the past 6 months though, I'm incredibly encouraged by what we're seeing happen with problem properties. I know they're not everywhere yet. But our Edmonton Fire Rescue Services has really stepped up. There's a really cohesive interdisciplinary team that's addressing problem properties. I think I won't quote stats, but they are having very high rates in terms of getting demolitions done of problem properties. And that's something, again, looping back to the budget, that is going to be funded for that ongoing work. So, absolutely here, you were mentioning too the pits of despair, but the undeveloped half-completed construction sites being an issue as well. So again, that's something that we're looking at, having a separate tax class so that those properties pay much higher taxes to encourage them to sell to someone else who can do it, or at least ensure that we have the funding to manage the enforcement, to have the fencing up to protect that. I'm enjoying this conversation very much. I just want to see if anyone online, if any questions have come through there.
Yeah, we did have a question about the Boyle Street Community Services.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll just check if Sarah is still here.
Okay, well maybe we'll just put a pin in that, but we can continue this conversation just because that's a bit of a different topic. But sorry, at the back.
Yeah, hi there. I appreciate you coming. This, I have to say, it's brave. This community is very passionate. I'll say I'm a bit disappointed in general with the way council's been going. Some of the things I've heard you say have been disappointing. We vote you people in, right? So you are our voice. And at city council meetings and in this type of situation, I feel the community members who come out, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if they're against something. It feels like, as my neighbors have said, that you guys just have your agenda and that's what you're gonna do, okay? And I'll say, it's a mature neighborhood, yeah, we totally bought here and we put up with the bullshit, basically, because we love this neighborhood. And to Randy's point, yeah, he's laughing, because it's shameful. feel like a government, I don't care if we're in debt, if people are taken care of, and our government doesn't do that. So I was at the council meeting when, what's his name, something Taylor, whatever, was speaking for that lot across the street from this hall. You guys approved it because you didn't care that we didn't want it to happen, and he was gonna put up apparently four row houses with basement suites, so that was 8. I emailed him after that meeting, cause I found out his name. Between us, it was like correspondence of 6 emails or so to ask to put a fence around that lot. And he kept saying, oh, I'm trying to find, oh yeah, I'm getting in touch with the construction business, all this bullshit. And then he puts it for sale, and there's still no fence. My husband's called, and like everybody's emailed, I spoke to the guy. So there are pipes, there are like, you guys don't care that we don't want infills here to preserve our home. Like, we love this area, you can renovate, give people money to preserve their old homes, that's why we're in a mature neighborhood. If you don't care about that stuff, at least you should care about the children that play across the street, the animals that are at the off-leash park, the animals that live here, the coyotes, everything. We can't even trim our trees in the park, so homeless people don't sleep under them because it's parkland. That's not parkland. This is urban. It's a bullshit answer. I've spoken to police, spoken to fire, I've spoken to conservation. They said it needs to be trimmed up to here. And you guys are refusing to do that for us. So what happens? There's fires in the park.
Yes.
Do I need to call the hospital because I've seen more than 2 people go in that pit? And I don't know if they're on crack. I don't know what the woman was doing. She was getting ready to sleep there at night or something. I even emailed the guy. Like, what are we supposed to do? You guys are not listening.
That's true.
You're not listening, and I appreciate you being here. I understand you live in Oliver. And yeah, density, we need it. Yahoo, put it in other places. This, like, there are other places in the city that you do not put those resources. So you say, okay, all the places that people who have addiction, they need to come to our neighborhood because the resources are here. Well, I want to tell you, there are people who are suffering with addictions on the south side. Why are you making them travel across the city to the worst area? Like, it's kind of ridiculous.
Like, is this happening in Glenora? Is any of these
Yeah, all the
mature
rich places.
Yeah, all those areas, are they getting touched, or is it just the lowest bearing fruit?
Like, do you mean
We
for,
already
I just wanna, yeah, thank you, just to clarify, do you mean is there
This
infill?
allowance of zoning and infills and 6 dwellings going
Yeah,
on?
yeah, I mean, we just approved a 6-story tower, not tower, but building in Glenora.
Would they
Yes,
be of
this
the same
is-
quality though, and would they put up with the BS? And I know Lenora won't, and
But-
if it goes down the wrong road, you'll have 200 lawyers calling you because that's what
the
it is.
route.
And
Yeah.
that's the difference, because they will fight, well, we don't have a lot of lawyers living in Queen Mary
Yeah,
Park.
I mean, I think
And
to
the
your, I
residents,
think,
half of Queen Mary is single detached, the other half are people, like whoever owns that property in Texas, and they just want, they're slumlords for whatever. So these people aren't gonna say anything. So our community, the people that can be vocal, that live there, that appreciate it, are a fraction of what the Queen Mary footprint is. So we're already in the minority, of the community.
yeah,
And it's just not being protected.
Actually, it should be stopped in all of the small communities
yeah,
downtown. We should be going in different areas.
yeah, and
To preserve these communities, you need to stop this.
yeah, and just to be clear, in terms of
It
like,
shouldn't be done in Glenora either.
yeah, and I just wanna be,
You're wrong in the attitude of making that diverse.
okay, and I hear that, and that's very clear from your perspectives. I was very clear when I was running that I believe in city plan, I believe in that vision. That vision was built with the input of thousands of Edmontonians. It considers Edmontonians who aren't born yet, who don't live in our communities yet, may want to live in our communities. And I, that's what I believe in. That's how I think that we build a more sustainable city, environmentally, socially, and financially.
We need to change the
You
vision.
know, we have a plan for our neighborhood, Brandy, what's it called again?
Redevelopment plan.
We
Yeah.
put a lot of money and time and effort and lawyers into that one too, so maybe if the city would consult our plan for our neighborhood, then that would be a little bit more cohesive.
Yeah, and I think you raised a really great point, and a challenge is that a lot of those plans happened before, they're 10 or 20 years old.
To adapt, but the fact is that it took so long, so once it was made, it was supposed to start right then, and it didn't. So we're behind, so I think for those changes that need to be made, the people who are voicing out are the voices that care. So you gotta listen to them opposed to a developer. So now who's gonna, can you actually give us an answer? How do we get these lots fenced up?
Yeah, so I mean, that's absolutely something that my office can follow up on. If there's a safety concern, that's something that the Enville team is really wanting to address. I hear that you have not gotten the response that you need, but we can follow that up.
Several times and
Yeah,
just
yeah.
said case closed.
I
Okay.
think we have the guy, so what's his excuse?
Yeah, but if
Do
you,
they not have to do that if it is open?
yeah, and my understanding is that they do. When there's open excavation, there needs to be fencing, and that's,
So do they not get fined or something?
yeah, so what I would ask is if you can email my office with the address, then we can follow that up with the infill compliance team and hopefully get fencing around that if fencing is what's needed.
Is what's needed. It's not like you're eating snow, it's still a hazard, right?
Oh, sure.
So it's
Yeah. I just so I believe that open excavations are managed by the building code, right? That's safety. So if that meets the building code requirements to have fencing around it, then.
But what about with the neighborhood ones, and if our concerns are safety, it's just strictly what the building code say? It's not like, oh, just put it around the fence because everybody who lives here is concerned about it?
Yeah, I mean, it's the ability that the city has to do that, right? The city has to follow laws, and so we can't, sorry?
City made those laws.
The bylaws, yeah, and so again, that's, yeah, and I agree, I think there's a lot of work we can do around enforcement, again, with problem properties, with derelict properties,
Spend the money there.
You've been last year to my door and you were asking me to vote, and I voted for
oh
you.
yeah, on 111th Avenue,
Yeah.
yes, yeah.
And since then, have you been around to ask people, to see yourself, how it's different, how it's changing, to ask what concerns we have, not us to go to you, because you're supposed to represent us, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I haven't seen you since then. I see on TV, but I haven't seen anybody coming to our board to ask about that. But I bet in 2 years or 3 years when we're going to get elections again, I'm going to see you there.
Yeah, a lot of my colleagues did door knocking. They do door knocking every summer. I didn't this summer. I was still feeling a bit overwhelmed and wanting to get on top of my other duties, but I absolutely do plan to do door knocking next summer. I try to make myself available through events like this, so I think this is our 4th community conversation. I'm always available by email, by phone. Yeah. But I hear you. I will definitely continue working to be more present and available.
For a change, I don't want to talk about development, although I'm keenly, actually I do, but it's Blatchford. But first, I've been following Councillor Janz's motions on loud vehicles.
Oh yeah.
I'm fully supportive. We back onto 119th Street here, and we live in Prince Rupert, just north of here. You cannot physically be more than 2 blocks from a major street in that neighborhood. It's small. And it's not, we don't have quite the racing problem that Grove Road has, but it still can be very annoying. And this is a leading question, fair warning. Why can the most heavily financed police department in Canada not actually enforce the laws that we have? Why do we need to have 2 more teams of people to enforce the existing laws? The police are out there already. I'm sure that the street racers and the loud muffler guys and the F-350 that was just in the neighborhood on my walk over here, I'm sure that they go by police cars every day, and yet nothing happens because it is not something that the police seem to be directed to enforce. So what are they doing? Why can they not enforce the law?
Yeah, and
All
that's.
those cases get thrown out, 70%, no matter what they enforce. Everything, the judicial system is not dealing with it. So the police are frustrated to be able to do petty crime, assaults. People are like, nope, it's okay. That's the issue right now.
They go to court and they win.
They don't even go. It's just like they just throw it out. It's not worth it.
It's not worth their time.
Yeah,
That's
but,
why, so the police, even they have all that money, I don't know what they're doing with it.
yeah,
They feel just as possessed, yeah.
yeah,
It's like, what do I do something, I get somebody, they're out the next day.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think there are those bigger systemic issues. I think, I personally think that I would like to see EPS focused on things that only EPS can do in terms of some of the organized crime, those types of issues. And I think if our peace officers can address the noise, then that's a win. I think that's more efficient use of our resources. We don't need, I don't know that we need EPS officers for those types of stops. But fully take your point in terms of the importance of that, of dealing with noisy vehicles. It really is something, again, across the whole ward. And as you say, like Rote Road, I live by the high level bridge, which can be very noisy, but it really impacts every community. And I would say, like, interestingly, like all of my colleagues, they hear that in their wards, and there's issues on the Anthony Henday, for example. So I'm really looking forward to supporting that. I think that report's coming next week. So yeah, hope to see those resources.
Sorry, I'd just like to bring you back to the point that Randy made and this young lady here about 311.
Oh, yeah.
I think there's a total disconnect from what you're thinking 311 is and what it actually is. I understand it's a centralized call center, and what they would love to do is dole out confirmation numbers or ticket numbers. When they do send out the bylaw officer, what he'll say is, looking at the central log, oh, that has nothing to do with me, I'll close the ticket. And he doesn't refer it or pass it along to somebody who actually can do something about it. It's left to the citizen to call again and say, hey, can I please get somebody out here? And what you'll usually get from 311 is they'll say, well, you have the old ticket number. You say yes. They'll look on their computer system and they'll say, oh yeah, that's been closed because we sent somebody out. And then you as the citizen have to say, well, you sent out the wrong person because nothing's been done.
Yeah.
And I'll give you a perfect example of that. Carter House in behind Rogers Center. Eaves troughs are falling off it. It's actually designated as a historical building for Edmonton. They moved it from its original location in behind the brick to its current location on 106th and 102nd Avenue. And they actually, the city poured brand new foundations for it because Fort Edmonton didn't even want this thing. The gentleman has had over a decade to fix it up, and he still hasn't. Every time I call, I have oodles of ticket numbers, and each time they come back saying, well, it's not my responsibility. The problem with the 311 system is it's ticket driven, and the more tickets they close, the better they look. The problem is that no one is actually going that extra mile and saying, you know what, you got the wrong person. But let me find somebody I can talk to, because what I kind of had enough of that. And I actually asked the bylaw person, well, don't you know anybody in planning and development that you can talk to? Because I know in my work, I know somebody over here and somebody over here. And his response was, no, I don't. He wanted me to continue making, and I said, no, that's not my job.
Yeah.
Finally, I have somebody from bylaw who's actually coordinating safe housing and the fire department to actually go and take a look. But the same thing for this is, what I don't understand is, why aren't the worker bees or the employees of the city of Edmonton given the latitude or the empowerment to make decisions?
Yeah.
They don't want to go that extra mile because it seems like somebody in management will yell at them for saying, well, no, you didn't close that ticket. So what I don't understand is, why is 311 just a call center? And if they are, why don't they have scripts for each department, like planning development or 211, and say, okay, yeah, I know who to call? Why is it left upon the citizen to make 4 or 5 different calls? I'll give you another perfect example for the neighborhood revitalization program. They did the standard for the lights. They were supposed to come and do some infill for sod. I've been waiting a year and a half. I've contacted the neighborhood revitalization shared email box that nobody seems to be looking at. I have at least 4 or 5 tickets that all have either been closed or referenced. First ticket reference, the second ticket reference, the third ticket, and it's all a kind of, well, we're going to wait and see, or it's not my job. And I find that thoroughly flabbergasting in the sense that, well, if you're here to help, why are you helping? Why is it, I was actually told, well, call them again. I'm calling 311, that's your job. But it's now, the onus is put on me to keep grinding this thing out. And I don't think that executive quite understands at the worker bee level or the frontline staff that there's this huge disconnect that nobody in the city of it, from what I can tell in the organization, is talking to one another. It's like, well, talk to him, talk to Randy, talk to Tim. Yeah, well, if I'm doing all that, why do I need you? And I don't think it should be incumbent upon me or even yourself. I mean, you have bigger issues to deal with, to call and say, well, why does it take a year and a half just to get somebody out to come and take a look at this? And that's where the frustration, and at least for me, boils over, is because that's not my job. And if 311 is just for ticket taking, then that should be communicated to the citizens of Edmonton. They're not really going to do anything for you. And if that's the case, we'll make it online then, or make it a automated telephone service. Why are you paying people to just say, okay, here's your ticket number?
Yeah,
Can
did you want to add to that?
Just to follow on, is that the 311 app, I have very much the same experience. If last Tuesday, I took a photograph of the 311 app. This is where the question came from about sidewalk clearing, because I took a photograph of the sidewalk that Nate had cleared beautifully, and then the city sidewalk that had a packed down central path. But it had not been 81 hours, which I looked up later, and no, that's what the city says, 81 hours, and I haven't actually checked it since, because I go visit my aunt tomorrow. But when I punch that into the 311 and load the photograph, within 30 seconds, I have a closed notification and no explanation about why.
Yeah.
There's very poor communication with it. So if you could tell the people who need to know to fix the 311, go to the telephone and the app, and I don't know whatever other online program you have with it, it would go to alleviate a lot of frustration.
Totally. Yeah. No, I hear you, and I've definitely heard these challenges before. The closed ticket thing is very frustrating, and we're talking about that as a council in terms of how we can improve that. I think a challenge is that when we look at satisfaction rates for 311, they're quite high, but that's done at the point of submitting a complaint, it's not satisfaction with resolution of the complaint. And so I think we need to start tracking that. Because again, people can be quite pleasant, they can take your concern, that can be a good experience, you can rate that highly. But if the eventual outcome is, total frustration, your issue hasn't actually been dealt with, we need to start to get to that. Again, and so I just want to say that's something I'm aware of, something my colleagues are aware of. We're definitely having that conversation. In the meantime, though, please never hesitate to send an email to my office if you're having, always start with 311. 311, I think, works very effectively in many cases, but in those cases where it's not working, please don't hesitate to send it to our office. And I'm looking at Maria and Robbie, because they're the ones who will do that, but they can forward it on, and sometimes it just helps if there's a bit of escalation coming through my office. And that also helps us see the trends in terms of where is 311 not working effectively, and then that helps me understand so that I can advocate further. But definitely appreciate that point. But please reach out. Oh, Robbie?
Before you continue.
Yeah.
It is 8:35.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I don't know about you. I'm good to go a little bit longer, but budget.
So we've got a tax increase this year. And there's $92 million slated for something called the Safe Mobility Program and the Downtown Vibrancy Strategy. I don't know what either of those.
Yeah.
The new program.
Yeah, Safe Mobility has been around for a while, so that's really focused on our Vision Zero goals, so that's zero road fatalities. So they do a range of different projects. Sometimes it's signals, doing different signals. It could be new sidewalks. Have you all heard of the Street Labs program? So, for example, a neighborhood might have an issue of speeding or shortcutting down a road, and then they can come in and you know, put flower pots or planters at the corners to help slow people down. So that's safe mobility. And then, sorry, the other one you mentioned. Oh, downtown vibrancy, yeah. So I think that also has been going for about at least a year, if not a little bit more. It's really focused on addressing some of the issues that we're seeing right in the core of the city. So I think that the downtown vibrancy, there's lots of different pieces to it. There's sort of economic development. There's, you know, encouraging construction and development in the downtown. And then also just sort of what we would call activations, so supporting events, just encouraging people to come downtown and support those businesses. And, you know, downtown, of course it's in the ward, but it really is a citywide asset. So it represents 1% of our land mass, the area of the city, but it generates over 10% of the tax rate. So there's a lot of value in ensuring that downtown stays prosperous, that benefits all of us.
It's changing.
Pardon me?
It's changing. Your office occupancy is sliding.
Totally. And so the downtown vibrancy strategy is really to respond to those changing conditions and figure out how we can continue to be a thriving downtown, recognizing that, yeah, we might not have all the workers back ever, right? Working from home, working from like a hybrid approach, I think is probably here to stay. So what do we need to do? How do we need to pivot to make sure that downtown stays successful?
For 90 million, okay.
Is it, sorry, is downtown?
2.8 million for the safe mobility program for flower pots and the downtown vibrancy.
I think downtown vibrancy is more like 5 million, isn't it?
They just got a total here for both.
Oh, okay, okay. Yeah, and again, with the safe mobility, I think it's a lot more than flower pots. Like, we can dig into it, but that's the intent.
Oh yeah, and we have one question from online.
Okay, let's go to that.
Which is about the Boyle Street Community Services relocation and just what kind of role the city is going to be playing in terms of staying on top of changes that are going to be happening around Victoria School, and kind of disorder and how that's going to be changing foot traffic and things in the area.
Great, yeah, so most of you likely know that Boyle Street is moving from their existing location on 105th Avenue to 107th Avenue in the old, well, I always think of it as the paintball place, but I think it was originally the Alberta. It was education, yeah.
Is that right, Lisa?
No,
Okay, never mind.
across from like Padmananis, I can never say that, yeah. Oh, no, that's okay. So Boyle Street had purchased that property late last year. It had zoning in place, and so it didn't come before council. That wasn't a decision that was before city council. So they had the zoning in place, and then Boyle Street applied for a development permit under that zoning, which was issued by the city maybe 2 months ago. And then just on Thursday, that development permit had been appealed by different groups in the community. So some neighbors, the Chinatown Business Association, Chinese Benevolent Association. So that was heard at the Subdivision and Development Appeal Board on Thursday. So we don't know the outcome of that. That's going to be a decision that the Subdivision and Development Appeal Board will provide in 2 weeks' time. So they could uphold the development officer's decision in terms of issuing the permit, or they could not uphold the decision and there wouldn't be a development permit. And there's probably some different variations along that theme, but that's my understanding of sort of the two key outcomes that could come. You know, I think that Boyle Street's new location there, if it goes ahead, I think it can be part of the solution to some of the challenges that we see. But I also think that the concerns of the community are absolutely valid. To your point about like it being on residents to have to kind of like chase things and follow things up, I really want to see a really robust good neighbor agreement put in place so that Boyle Street commits to different actions they can take to help mitigate any impacts in the community. And I really want the city to be a strong partner in monitoring that and ensuring that that's upheld. I don't think it should be on residents to do that. I think the city needs to be doing that. I also think the city needs to be really proactive in the services that we're providing. And this goes to a broader point, but just, yeah, some of the disorder and lack of cleanliness that you're seeing in your communities, I think that it's a huge issue, and we need to meet that with enhanced services. And I think that's true for the new Boyle Street location as well. And then there's just, some things like potentially relocating a bus stop that's used most frequently for students going to Victoria, potentially just relocating that. So lots of ways I think the city can be involved, and I think lots of ways for the community as well to share the concern. So yeah, I think your question mentioned pedestrian patterns, so crossing on 107th. Again, just looking at the different physical infrastructure that can be put in place to make sure people are crossing safely. Yeah, so I think we'll have more clarity in 2 weeks when that decision comes out. Again, I know it's a big change. I know these neighborhoods feel a ton of pressure, right? And I get that. Some of the things that I think are positive about the new location is that it will include some housing, that being a core need. There's going to be 150, Boyle Street is consolidating their administrative staff on that site, so there'll be 150 workers there, which I think is really great for supporting surrounding businesses as well. But yeah, a lot more. Was that the only online question? Or sorry, did you want to add to that?
I just had a follow-up question, just in dealing with struggling populations, we'll call it that. What do you know now about, is the province going to fund the buildings yet for the transitional homeless housing? I don't know what to call those buildings.
Yeah, yep, the permanent supportive housing, yeah.
Yeah, that.
Yeah, so the province did come out with an announcement, it's probably 6 weeks ago now.
Yeah.
That was, I think at least 70 million in the Edmonton area, and that was for additional shelter and mental health supports, which I think is really phenomenal. That's great investment that we desperately need. They did also provide Homeward Trust with, I think it was about $12 million to sort of equalize the funding that the similar agency in Calgary gets. My understanding is that Homeward Trust is using that for the permanent supportive housing units. So that's great.
So do you have people moving in there yet? Or?
Yep,
Yeah.
yep,
Okay.
yep. So I believe that they'll be rented up sort of by the end of the year, so that's 500 new units of permanent supportive housing. So supporting people coming out of homelessness, which is huge. I mean, I think again, right now we're in a situation where we're often just sort of displacing challenges, but providing that permanent supportive housing actually helps solve some of the challenges.
I hadn't heard anything about that.
Yeah, it is encouraging. It was a great announcement a few weeks, or yeah, I guess probably a month or two ago from the province. But
Trust, private company, or how's that work?
yeah, and to be honest, I used to work in affordable housing, and I'm still confused by the government. But it is a community-based organization, so it's nonprofit. It's run by a board of governors. I believe it was sort of originally set up through the federal government as being. I think the idea was that the federal government could have funds, and they needed a local agency who knew where those funds should be dispersed. So I believe that was sort of the origins of the organization, but yeah, they're run by a volunteer governance board. The City of Edmonton, we provide some operational funding, I think about $1 million a year, but we also partner with them for those permanent supportive housing sites. For example, they're the not owners, they sort of manage contracts with other service providers for those.
There's one on 111th Avenue and about 130th Street approximately.
Yeah.
And you got another one on 124th Street and about 112th and 13th Avenue.
Yeah.
There's one up in Kensington area, Wellington area, and a couple on the south side, I guess.
Yeah.
So the city bought those lots and built them along with provincial money, or how did that?
So those were city-owned properties, and then it was actually through the federal government's Rapid Housing Initiative. They came out with capital dollars to help fund those, so the city was able to take advantage. So that was Rapid Housing Initiative. They call it round 1, round 2. Round 3 has just been announced, which is really encouraging. And so hoping to continue to do that. And then to the point I think that was raised before in terms of, concentrating services here. The city has been really deliberate that with that new permanent supportive housing, that we are looking to serve all communities. So again, that's been more dispersed. So you mentioned Westmount, Inglewood, King Edward Park is another one, Capilano. So they, that is something that the city is committed to, and I think is a good approach as well.
So would the city consider moving that new thing that's supposed to be on 107th Avenue, since we already have a Hope Mission and injection sites all within walking distance? Would they consider actually moving that to some other community?
Yeah.
Other than, again, being the center of Edmonton?
Yeah.
I hear what you're saying, but the skeptic inside of me is saying, well, they've already spent the money, they're already halfway down this road, and now they're gonna turn around and say, no, we're gonna stop you in your tracks, and you're not gonna be able to get that old education building.
Mm-hmm.
I find it quite odd that, again, yes, they're building these affordable housing units in different, but I mean, a couple here, this is gonna be something major, again, within basically our community, where we're going to have the fallout of, dealing with encampments, people sitting in the middle of the road or lying in the middle of the road, and then calling again and saying, well, hey, who's supposed to be looking after this? I mean, I see all these help vans and trucks driving around, and I don't even know what they do. I mean, there's a policeman inside there, along with somebody in civilian clothes, and the last time I saw them, when they were looking after somebody, they asked them, can I take your pulse? The guy said no. And he said, well, are you thirsty? He said, yes. They gave him a bottle of water and a couple of granola bars. And they left him. And my whole thing is, well, wait a minute. I mean, that's a pretty good looking truck you got there. Why don't you take him with you?
Yeah.
And the answer was, well, that's not what we do. Okay, so including help, we have 7 different enforcement agencies within the city. I don't think we need an 8th one. I think what we need to do is find out, well, okay, what are you guys actually doing out there? I mean, to the public, if you're gonna hand out granola bars and bottles of water, well, I don't think you need a $50,000 truck for that. And a police officer sitting next to you.
Yeah.
I mean, it's gotten to the point where I've seen 3 City of Edmonton workers picking up garbage that have 2 peace officers beside them for security. Really? Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
And now we're gonna put this thing in the city, in the middle again, on 107th Avenue, which has enough problems. And I just don't understand the logic behind it. If you're spending $25 million to buy a building, well, heck, why don't you build one, maybe further out, either on the north end or the south end, and you can build as big as you want, instead of in the center again.
Yeah.
To your point about Edmonton's downtown and wanting to keep that core revitalized and bringing in revenue. I just don't quite understand the mentality behind it.
Sure. Did you want to add to that?
The Oil Street Community Services. Oil Street Community Services have been working in the inner city for over 50 years. They were here and they were an agency working with people in that area and this area long before most of us ever moved into this community. They were here, they do incredibly good work, they provide amazing services and try really hard to work with the community leagues. Historically, this community league and most of them have not been prepared to work in any kind of cooperative way with Boyle Street. Boyle Street, I think, deserves an incredible amount of credit. They own the building behind the new arena and have owned it for a very long time. And we're quite prepared to stay there. It is the people who are coming out of the hockey games who have become very upset and said, you guys need to move on.
Isn't that awful?
Well,
Yes, but the fact of the matter is that they were, when they set up that arena, they also knew that Boyle Street had also been there for 20 years.
That's
It's
right.
not like this,
They didn't
they
know.
moved in and it's a big surprise. So So now, the fact is that they bought another building that moves them out of the vision of the arena. But the fact of the matter is I think they have done it all above board. They do an incredible amount of work. They built the building they are planning to build is trying to incorporate many of the issues that have been there. And I don't think it's necessarily the city's job in any way to be defining the nature of the Boyle Street. They're an independent, nonprofit agency who work in cooperation with many other agencies and with the city and with the province. So if they have a band going around, which I know they do, and they do a lot of work, and they do a lot of work trying to outreach and connect with people who may or may not be ready at that moment to be making changes, but at least they're working with them and trying to deal with that. So I don't think that's the city's.
Well, so my point being though, and to your point, yes, the Boyle Street does do good work, but we have our church in that area, and it's tent city. On Sundays, we have our people that go to church, our elderly, walking over these people. And the thing is, well, come on, I don't think that's fair to them. And if the problem is that bad, I don't think moving it a couple of blocks north is going to resolve anything by retrofitting an old building. And this is kind of where I kind of again go, well, wait a minute, if you have that much money thus far, wouldn't it have been better spent? And perhaps the city should have said this, instead of going into the inner city again, let's build our own building where we can perhaps house more and get this and get the medical facilities and or psychological facilities that are needed and or required for the homeless. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm more than willing to help out. However, when you've been seeing it day in and day out, and again, going back to 311, well, we'll put in a complaint. I mean, I have a complaint that's been over 150 days on my phone that's still open.
Yeah.
You're kidding me, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't quite understand where the disconnect is happening at the executive level, at the middle management level, and at the worker bee level, because there definitely is a disconnect.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I think I would echo those comments just in terms of, the choice of relocation was Boyle Streets. Again, they're a nonprofit, they're their own entity, and they chose to make that property purchase. I think that, I think in terms of some of those challenges, the encampments, people sitting on the streets, again, that for me is a result of people not having a home and not having a place to go. And those are some of the things that Boyle Street can help with. So in terms of what I understand the reasons for the relocation as well, is that the building that they're in right now, it used to be a banana ripening factory. So it's not built to purpose, it's not accessible, there's stairs going in, and the basement floods on a very regular basis. And so that's meant that they might be offering programs and then all of a sudden they can't. And so now people don't have anywhere to go. They also, in their space, if someone is having a crisis or is acting challenging, they don't have any space where they can help work with that person because it's just basically one room. But the new facility will have more spaces so that instead of just sending people out into the community who maybe are in crisis, they can deal with them more effectively there. Again, I think it's important that we continue talking about this. I think, again, if the Subdivision and Development Appeal Board upholds the development officer's decision, there's a lot of work to do around the Good Neighbor Agreement to address this. So I'm just looking at the clock, and maybe, would you like the last question?
Sure, it's just a couple. So one question, we've got these signs here saying 30 playground, and it says photo enforced. That's not true.
Oh, I don't think so.
So they shouldn't say that.
Yeah, that's
okay?
interesting.
Because also, like, if everybody needs money because we can't give photo radar tickets, well, please ticket the places that say photo enforced, i.e. by the park, because we have so much speeding going down this road. My neighbor Lori, who is the one who is fed up with this neighborhood, she lives right on the corner. So she gets all of the transient, all the drunk people, all of her car getting but, she has so many people speeding by, and she has 5 kids.
Mm.
Okay, so when they were really younger, that's an issue.
Oh, yeah.
And so I would appreciate an electronic photo radar right here, because it's ridiculous, as well as, what's the street, Randy, the one that goes around, 119? 119,
Yeah.
because that goes down to, what's the neighborhood, Pinterberg?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, and so please do that, if we can get that going, because
So-
that's a great use of money.
Yeah, and I agree. Unfortunately, right now, there's a moratorium at the provincial level on any new
Yeah.
permanent photo enforcement, so we are advocating.
This is a different, this is a park, children's safety, public safety, children issue.
Yeah,
Okay,
oh,
so
yeah,
we can start spending it that way and see if they'll lift it,
yeah.
It's true Prince Rupert Park too, it says photo enforcement now.
right? All of
Yeah.
them say this by a playground.
On 16th Street, the same way, you've got one of those monitors that just
Oh, yeah.
constantly flashes red,
Yeah.
red, red, red,
It
red.
starts voting in.
Complain, nothing.
Sorry, what, oh, like this, that shows your speed, you
Shows your
mean?
speed.
Oh, okay, yeah. Yeah, no, so totally agree. We have letters of advocacy to the province to change that, but I agree, it's absolutely a safety issue.
But then it needs to be changed, because it doesn't do very much.
Yeah.
People speed here all the time and down to Prince Rupert. So there's that, and also Randy, correct me if I'm wrong, the crosswalk, we've still not been able to get one. We need a crosswalk, because people are almost
So-
hit, and I can't imagine how many people get hit.
So to this point, the city of Edmonton, and this was part of revitalization renewal, they built this wonderful winding path because they said we should connect this neighborhood
So Westmount,
right through to Westmount instead of going all the way around to 11th or
the
7th.
bike path.
So they built a path, it's really well used, but it hits 119th Street. People come flying around this corner, and there's a couple times that people have really jammed on the brakes because people are in the crosswalk. We've asked the city, and they say, well, everybody doesn't qualify.
Oh,
So-
yeah, we did the survey, we're like, when did you do the survey?
Yeah, yeah.
Right, it was before all of this extra building, before the pathway was actually.
So again, it's one of
done.
these half-done measures and then walk away and until somebody gets hit there, and then it's
Yeah.
gonna be, oh my gosh, we should
Yeah.
have done something.
Totally, and this goes back to the safe mobility strategy, so having the investment to do that type of thing,
And
but,
that's bike
They
lanes as
mentioned
well.
it, but
Yeah,
it's,
Like
it's
everything
too
there.
high traffic, there's people with dogs, parents with
Yeah.
children, bicycles, rollerblades, those scooter things, there's everything, it's way too much, and you have to wait forever, right? So, I'm gonna email you, I will.
Please,
My
yeah.
husband emailed you about this corner house, he said, so I'll forward that, I'm gonna forward everything to the board as well though, because we
Sure.
need this stuff dealt with. I've spoken to conservation, the police, everything, I'm gonna ask you to have the trees trimmed, because that's gonna help with our transient population, because
All
they
the way
should
out
not
to the
be,
north of Prince Rupert.
they, yes, because it's the dog park that connects
Yeah,
the
yeah,
two. And there's been so much filth, like Randy he's been our president, God bless him, he has trashed his share of tents, and that is not fair, even the police, like nobody should be doing that, but it's because the trees are not trimmed. We complain, so they trim some of them, but then they leave a whole bunch right behind the houses, right by the alley, all the shrubbery is just overgrown, it's scary. Once there's that kid who was missing last year, I was like, oh my god, I gotta look through the shrubs, because there can be dead bodies. There have been, literally, and I'm sure there's been people close to death in their tents in the winter in the shrubs. Like, it's not good, and animals go in there, like, I don't want my dog going under a tree and going to some random person's tent and somebody, like, killing him. Right? I don't want someone to kidnap a child and go into their tent.
well, and I'm not comfortable with the association that
I know
That's-
this, but it happens. This stuff happens. We need to be proactive. Even my dog, I don't want him going in there and finding some food, some chicken bones, something that somebody left.
yeah,
Right?
no, that's fair.
There are things there. So I'm gonna email you about this.
Good.
People are gonna know about it. I will have to go get a letter from conservation if you want that, but we need those trees trimmed. And, if we can have some sort of camera here as a study for crime, I would love it. This parking lot, this corner gets so much activity that you can't see anywhere else. And two, you said it's a cyclical thing about the crime rate, but people break into our houses, all these things, we have it on camera, and they don't, you know, they, yeah, you can never, I'm like, I see the person right now. I work at Wild Birds and I've seen the guy,
Yeah.
right? But people don't have faith that anyone's gonna come.
Yeah.
So we need to change it because the people who keep committing these crimes are the same people.
Totally.
And that's not cool that they're allowed to terrorize us, but I think the start would be getting the park sorted out.
Yeah, no, that's great, and I think you're right in terms of, there being big systemic issues, but we can also address some of the more straightforward things like maintenance and cleanliness, absolutely. I think in terms of the call response, that's definitely something I'm digging into more, just in terms of, I've sort of heard enough examples of people calling 911 in what I would consider a priority one, like crime in progress, threats to people, and there not being a fast response. So definitely wanting to get more information on that to make sure that we're, getting help when we call for that help. Absolutely.
I think some of that has a lot to do with what's going on at the time too, with the police.
Yeah.
I did call one time for 911. I saw a guy, for whatever reason, I woke up 2 o'clock in the morning and I was looking out my kitchen window. There's a bicycle up against my fence, and I'm like, a bike. And I seen a guy going through my neighbor's car in the alley. And I phoned 911, and the guy was there on the phone with me, and they asked me, is he still in the car? Yeah. And then, I'm talking 4 minutes later, 2 cruisers come down with no lights on down the alley and just stop, and the guys get out, and they just walked right up to the car. This guy was so busy trying to pull stuff out, and they turned their flashlights on him. I was sitting there watching, and I just jumped. They had him back in the car just like that. I know like this year my garage got broken into twice, and I phoned him and no one was available. But that's how it is. I think it's just,
For sure.
they can be all over the city and they just don't
Totally.
have a guy.
Yeah, and EPS has recently switched their so they call that their patrol squads. Those are the folks that respond to calls, and they've looked at all of that call data and come up with a new a 10 squad model, which is meant to help to make sure that there are those resources there to respond more of the time. So I think it's going to be good to see how that plays out and what tweaks might be needed on that too.
I just have a request in regards to the summary of tonight's topics and the things that have been said and done and what you're going to do about it. And I would sure like to see that on the Queen Mary newsletter going out to everybody.
Okay.
That would be really important to make sure that we know exactly what you're going to be doing now with the things that we've brought forward to
Sure.
you. And that everybody in the community can see that. I think missing out on the citizen action center response wasn't great. That there's so many people that didn't even know what you were talking about, or didn't even want to.
Oh, the citizen
wouldn't
satisfaction.
want to have responded and didn't know. So without making a decision so serious in regards to some of these things like climate action, raising taxes, the bike lanes, the snow removal, the warehouse park, all of these things, I think you need a little bit more information coming back to you to make these decisions. So I'd really like to see more accountability in regards to that.
Sure, yeah, no.
Maybe it can go through the community newsletters, that there's a link that people can actually do the voting that way.
Yeah.
Instead of going through a citizen action center.
Like the citizen satisfaction survey?
Yeah, the surveys.
Yeah.
Maybe they can just go through all the different communities.
Sure, yeah, I mean, I think.
Sure get a really good stat, that way if you're gonna go by stats to make decisions. Right?
Yeah, no, that sounds great. And again, I think having multiple ways to provide feedback is really, really helpful.
Yeah.
I work to do, so every week on Mondays, I do a weekly update in terms of some of the decisions that have happened at council, and then quarterly newsletters as well. So that's a good opportunity to reach out or sort of stay in touch. Definitely happy to connect with the Community League if there's specific content for the newsletters. I would just in terms of sort of follow-up action items, I would just ask, some of the specifics, so like that property that needs the fences, the crosswalk that's needed. If you're able to put those in emails with sort of the addresses, that's the information that we need to be able to action that. And again, my wonderful team will follow up on that, and happy to circle back as well. But I really appreciate everyone taking the time tonight. This was our first in-person. I've only done these virtually before. I don't know how the hybrid worked out, but I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed being in person. I enjoyed seeing you all. So thank you for taking the time. Have a good evening. You bet. This is.
Question before you go.
Oh yeah.